All right, what's going on, fellas? I'm doing a real quick, I guess, synopsis. I'm breaking down the entire Friday the 13th series into three different segments: 1 through 4, 5 through 8, and then the last three, which are uh, Jason Goes to Hell, the Final Friday, Jason X, and Freddy vs. Jason. So 1 through 4. Obviously, this was intended to actually be the series. The fourth entry is referred to as it was billed as the final chapter. So right off the right off the bat, you think, okay, well, it's just those four movies. Not so much the case. I just right now have finished watching the four. I'm about to start the fifth one. So my thoughts on 1 through 4. Number one, obviously, it's a dated movie. You got an early appearance from Kevin Bacon. The effects are not too great. To be fair, this is 1980. It's one of those movies that you automatically see. It's like, yeah, this is 80s horror. I don't really know how to explain it, but I mean, it still holds up, and I still like it. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the 70s and 80s were, to me, kind of like the golden age of horror. But that's just my opinion. Um, it's a great movie, builds up the suspense real well, real interesting twist ending that no one really ever sees coming, and overall, it's just a real great movie. So that brings us to Friday the 13th Part 2. This is the entry that introduces us to Jason Voorhees. So obviously, for those of you who aren't aware, I don't know if this, I should say spoiler alert for this, but he doesn't don the hockey mask. He's got a sack, like some kind of a sack over his head with a little hole cut out. And yeah, kind of reminds, like I said, I think I said this in my separate video. Kind of looks like the killer from The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Every time I always kind of got the two movies mixed up because I remember that in the cover of The Town That Dreaded Sundown, they had the killer with that mask, and like, is it? I remember always mixing the two up when I was a kid, and I'd see them at rentals. But part two, Jason made an impression. I mean, he was, for lack of better terms, gangster. He killed a kid in a wheelchair, which was pretty hardcore. I mean, he was actually a good kid, didn't do drugs or anything like that. It's usually the ones that screw around, do drugs, things like that, that are the first to go. So it was pretty jarring to see a guy in a wheelchair that didn't do drugs and didn't drink and was in training and basically never gave up hope about possibly going back to using his legs. To see him take a machete to the face while the chair falls through a whole flight of steps, I remember that being real jarring as a kid. It was really, really crazy. I also remember how I seem to be the only one that always notices that Stu Cherno's character, despite passing for he's like the poster child for a throwaway character. But he managed to survive by getting so drunk that he couldn't drive back to the camp. He had to spend the night because he and a bunch of other counselors went to a bar. He overdid it, and he pretty much survived what could have been a nasty massacre because he was too wasted to drive back. A real interesting little tidbit that not a lot of people seem to notice. Overall, I like that movie. Made an impression. I really do. I really did like it. Effects were a little better. Um, so obviously that moves us to part 3. Not a particularly strong entry, but watchable in its own way. That year they wanted to do 3D everything. Jaws 3D, Friday the 13th Part 3 3D. Um, just a little pro tip, guys, for those of you who are thinking of doing this marathon. If you own these movies on DVD or Blu-ray and they come with those 3D glasses, don't use those. They're gonna make you sick. The 3D from then is not quite up to par with the 3D you may know now. I just want to throw that out there. My friend and I learned that the hard way a long time ago when we were kids, and we finally got a chance to purchase these movies on DVD, yeah, just watch the 2D version. Trust me on this. Characters, all easily throwaway characters. This is obviously the entry that introduces you to the Jason that we all know, which is a guy with a hockey mask. He kills some punks some biker punks that have it coming. An obnoxious kid and a couple of stoners. There was a Tommy Chong ripoff kind of a guy, and there was this really annoying, heavy-set guy that he was kind of annoying, but at the same time, he was a relatively good, quiet kid. He wasn't into drugs. He was kind of nerdy and awkward. Kind of a little bit off-putting to see him go. I would have thought that, because I know that in the previous entry, there was a final girl and she got to survive with a guy. It would have been nice to have seen him or the love interest survive with her, but what can you do? So that brings us to Friday the 13th, the final chapter. One more note about Part 3. No characters at all that have really gone on to do anything else. The only character I actually did recognize was one of the biker dudes, biker punks, whatever they're called. He was a bouncer in the original Fright Night. And yeah, of all the characters, that's the only one I could really remember. So I'm shocked I even remember that, but, I guess I'm just a freak of nature like that. So, moving up to Friday the 13th, the final chapter, that's the 4th entry. Most star-studded, obviously. It's one of the ones that I remember more than the rest as a kid growing up, mostly because it had a lot of actors I recognized. Crispin Glover right before Back to the Future. Corey Feldman. I think this might have been... Well, if it came out in '84, I don't know which came out first, this one or Gremlins, but it was Corey Feldman when he was, starting to make when he was starting to get a presence in film. He was just a kid at the time. It's a pretty good movie. It was shot real well. I'm sorry about that if you hear that, guys. My cats are play fighting. Really am sorry about that. But it's a good entry, and honestly, it would have been the perfect capper to the series. Ending was kind of a little bit weird and ambiguous, but, the series was so popular that you guys are too much, man. I'm sorry about that. My cats. I would have been okay with those 4, but, it had really, by this time the series had gained a lot of steam, and they wanted to do it again, so they did. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wrap this video up so I could do parts 5 through 8, and I'll keep you up to speed on those as well. Questions or comments, you all do know the drill. Peace out, fellas.